Two buddies and I were on a night dive hunting prawns. It was about 1 a.m., and we were a good 100 feet deep, the darkest black you could imagine. We used to do this thing on night dives where we'd get in a circle, turn off our lights, then stir up the water and watch the bioluminescence float around us like floating stars in a black watery space. It was beautiful. Only this one time, we turn off our lights, stir up the water, and the water glows just enough to reveal a fourth person sitting in our circle. We were at a dive resort, so it wasn't so odd to see another diver. Only, it was 1 a.m. We'd seen no one else prepping a dive at the dock. He was also alone, which was odd considering the dangerous conditions of a night dive in those waters, and he had no fins or gloves. I don't know how he swam so well without fins, or didn't get hypothermia without boots or gloves. We wore dry suits because it was so cold, but this dude was in a wetsuit with exposed skin. We thought we saw a giant gash in one of the legs. So the three of us notice him, and we're too scared to move. I can hear my buddies panting in their regs, and the guy just smiles, waves, and then swims away. Whenever you think you're alone and someone just shows up, like in an alley at night, it's weird. 100 feet underwater at night is terrifying.
My friend and I were on a vacation with our wives. The wives stayed on the beach one day while my friend and I got on a party boat and headed out into the ocean over the waves. There were about 6 other people on the boat with us, all of us non-stop smiling and having a blast. The driver of the boat was very cool, but you couldn't really understand his English. At one point, some people on the boat wanted to stop so they could take a dip. We ended up stopping, and all of us jumped into the water. My friend and I jumped off the boat to the right, and the rest of the people to the left. While splashing and laughing, suddenly, everyone on the other side of the boat started screaming. We couldn't climb back onto the boat fast enough, and when we did, we looked over the edge to the other side and saw the water was bright red, and one of the people were gone. Somehow, everyone claims they didn't see anything at all. The woman that disappeared never turned up, and it was the most insane thing that I've ever seen.
I was on a cruise ship with my twin sister when we were 17. It was so much fun, except for one of the last nights on the ship. While doing the typical cruise ship party stuff, we noticed a couple creepy guys following us around. We didn't do anything except make fun of them and give them looks that obviously said we didn't enjoy their stalking. The real terror took place in our stateroom the night we noticed them. There was a door in our room that connected it to the room next door. When we first checked into our room after boarding the ship, we opened the door to a dark, drafty, vacant room. We closed it and kept it locked the whole trip. In the middle of the night, I woke up to my sister whispering my voice in desperation to wake me up. I had never heard her voice like this, so fearful. I understood why immediately when I looked up to the corner and saw our door open. Didn't see anyone, but this was scary as hell. You can't imagine. She begged me to get up and close it, and I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to just lay there and allow some creep to come into our room. So I got up and closed it, then locked it. I turned the light on and dialed 0 on our room phone for assistance. They said they would go next door and see if someone was there. They called back a short time later and told us that the room was occupied by 2 men and asked us if they did anything after opening the door. My sister and I were mortified and told them no, but we wanted to switch rooms immediately. They understood how scared we were and obliged. We didn't see the 2 creeps again at all. The 2 of us have discussed how and why they would open our door, but then do nothing and sit in the darkness next door. And we have not yet come up with anything logical, except to freak us out.
My dad told me before I was born he would stay out in the ocean for a few weeks at a time, catching swordfish with a crew of guys. He wasn't the captain, and the captain was a nice guy that I've met. My dad is still friends with him today. He told me a long time ago they took a new guy out with them, and he started to act really weird while fishing with them. They would wake up and catch him watching them while they slept. And one night, my dad and his friend woke up to find him gone, not in his bed, not in the cabin with them. And when they went out on the deck, he wasn't there. He just vanished from their boat. They never saw him again and have no idea what happened to him. My dad has said that it felt like he just stepped off the boat one night into the water and sank to the bottom without a care in the world.
I was diving off the coast of Fiji, and we went through a natural tunnel, like a 10-meter cave passage through a rock formation. So we start swimming through the cave, and suddenly the light was weird, like the blue tint from the water had been replaced by a red one. Now all divers will know that this isn't only weird because of the color change, but also because red is the first color to disappear after a certain depth, usually between 30 feet to 40 feet, and we were over 70 feet deep. Also bear in mind that this was late morning on a sunny day. So imagine this scene. Me and my buddy are going through an underwater cave, and suddenly everything, for no apparent reason, is tinted red, a color that you are literally supposed to be unable to see while diving at that depth during the day. Upon exiting the cave, everything was back to blue. I thought it was just me, so I didn't signal to go back up. After the dive, my buddy asked if I'd seen the water tinted red too. We can't explain it, and the folks from the local dive shop had no idea what we were talking about.
When I was a kid, my dad would always take me to this one specific beach to go fishing. I loved it so much that even when I grew up, I continued to go there, sometimes with my friends, and sometimes alone. This story happened when I was alone. I backed my truck up to the water, released my boat, parked my truck up at the top of the ramp, and I headed out. It was a beautiful day, but a bit overcast. I enjoyed the occasional nap while out on the water, and today I needed one. I kicked my feet up and I put my head back. I must have fell into a pretty deep sleep, because when I woke up, my boat was still floating peacefully, but to my horror, there was another boat right next to mine. I stood up in surprise and saw that there was another fisherman sitting on his boat in a chair, looking at me. He was older than me, maybe in his 50s. He had long brown hair that was slicked back, and honestly, he looked like bad news. He gave me a weird smile and said, "Rise and shine." I nervously chuckled and told him I didn't mean to doze off and I had to be on my way. My heart started to pound when the guy said, "Nope," but he didn't move from his chair. I got up and started the motor on my boat and drove away. I have no idea why he said nope to me when I told him I had to leave. I have no idea why he just sat there and let me leave. But damn, that was so nerve-wracking.
When I was 13 years old, my mother dragged my younger sister and I on a Disney cruise. I won't lie, At first I was extremely pissed about going, but it was actually cool. Something crazy happened to me while on the trip though. One night my mom and sister were annoying the hell out of me, and I told my mom I was going to the top deck to just look around. She told me to be careful and to come back in 20 minutes. I told her I would, and when I got up to the top deck, I walked over to the railing and was looking down at the black ocean that was being cut through by our huge ship. As I was looking down, I saw what looked like a man that appeared to have fallen or something. He went by very fast, and I thought I saw his arm come up, and at the time I even thought I heard him make a noise. He looked petrified, as I imagine you would if you fell off of a cruise ship, and I started freaking out. I ran over to a woman and a man that were talking and playing cards at a table nearby. They were wearing the ship's employee clothing, and I told them what I saw. They both took it very seriously, and the man called for help on his radio. I explained to more employees, including the captain, what I saw, and they did an emergency passenger welfare check. My mom got called up to where I was, and a while later they told me everyone on the ship was accounted for. They pretty much made me swear on my life that I was sure and that I wasn't lying. At the time I told them I was sure. 11 years later, I am just as sure I saw a man in that water.
I'm in my late 30s, and I'm a travel counselor for a large tour company. We are pretty well known, so I'm not going to be dropping any names for anonymity's sake. That being said, what occurred here is 100% true, and yes, I know everyone claims that on here, but you'll just have to take my word for it. So as a traveler counselor, I book many cruises. Both my company and the many cruise lines offer us in the industry what's known as fam trip, to familiarize us with what the cruise line offers. So I was approached 2 weeks before the holidays with the chance to take such a trip on a 4-night cruise to the Baja Peninsula. It left the day after Christmas. Since my husband had a big guys trip with his best friend lined up, I thought this was perfect. My in-laws have been begging us to watch our 7-year-old daughter, so she went to grandma's and I went on a free cruise. What could go wrong? A little sand, surf, sun, and while it's winter, 66-degree days are much warmer than the teens and below zeros we have up north. The flight was perfect. The embarking went as smooth as butter. The lovely balcony room I was put in was wonderful. So far, so good, right? That night, I'm at dinner, and an Indian man sits next to me. Now this struck me as odd, as there were several empty seats available. He strikes up conversation, introduces himself, and says he's traveling with his elderly parents, his sister, and her family. He's 26, works in communications. He seems nice. We have a lovely conversation, and I throw in there that I'm happily married, I have a child, etc. Finally, his family arrives to eat, and we part ways. I figure I'll never see him again. The next day, I get off at our port. I signed up for a Segway tour, and who do I see in line? My new friend and his father, and I assume his oldest nephew. He, of course, waves at me, and we make simple chit-chat before starting our tour. After the tour, there was the opportunity to walk around. I chose to browse the shops and get some pizza. However, I felt I was being watched or followed. I turned around a few times, but didn't see anyone. I shrugged it off and went about my day. I go back to the ship to change into my bathing suit and go lay out on the deck. It's a perfect 72-degree day, and my skin loved the vitamin D. I ordered a drink and put in my wireless headphones. I'm dozing when I feel hands roughly shake me. I jolt awake, sitting straight up. It's him, although he's frowning, staring at me, disapproving. He angrily tells me I'm not allowed to show off my body, and that I'm disrespecting him and his religion by acting like a slut. By now, I have 2 cruise employees I'm friends with who hear the commotion and are telling him he needs to leave me alone. I tell him I'm a married woman and what I do isn't any of his concern. As he stomps off, he informs me if I was his woman, I'd be sorry. I figure I won't have to deal with him again, and the next day is perfect. No sign of him. We are at sea, and I hang out on my balcony, sunning and dozing. That night, after a few martinis at the piano bar, I settle in my room for the night after talking with my hubby through Facebook Messenger. I'm about to doze when my door starts shaking. It sounds as if someone is violently running into my door. I throw a robe on and look out the peephole. It's the Indian guy. He looks crazed. It was formal night, so he was wearing formal clothes, his hair mused, red-faced, screaming profanities at me. Luckily, the guy across the hall, a pretty big guy, opens his door and tells the creep to get the hell out of the hall before his kids were woken up. The Indian guy gives one last profanity and then leaves. The next morning, the guy across the hall tells me something terrifying. He swears the guy had a steak knife in his hand. I inform the cruise director, but I'm not sure what happened after that. I only saw him one more time on the cruise. As we were disembarking, he was carrying one of his nieces and luckily didn't see me.